Hi, welcome to the One True Church. I'm Hugh Whitmore. Today's Bible teaching is called, Does the Old Testament Tell Us That Paul is a False Apostle? And the quick answer is yes, but not in a direct way. It's more of an allegorical way, or what Jesus would call a parable. Saul of Tarsus, who became known as Paul in the New Testament, was foreshadowed by another Saul in the Hebrew Scriptures. Today's teaching is a lesson in the patterns and metaphors the Bible gives us at the story level, so we can elevate ourselves into a spiritual union with Jesus when we learn these patterns. If you don't learn the patterns and metaphors of the Bible, you will have trouble understanding the Bible, and you'll have trouble entering the kingdom. In Genesis, the first book of the Bible, of course, God calls a man named Abraham to fulfill his plan of eternal salvation by creating a race of people, known as the Hebrews, to perform the task. Abraham had a son named Isaac. Isaac had a son named Jacob. Jacob had 12 sons, and the generational offspring of these sons became the 12 tribes of Israel. In Genesis 49:1, Jacob said to his 12 sons, "Gather yourselves together, that I may tell you that which shall befall you in the last days." If you don't know about the last days, it refers to a future time that was always warned about, either through the prophets or by God himself. And the last days were when most of the Hebrews would be judged and destroyed by God because they had refused to follow his plan of salvation and glorify him adequately with the spiritual energy that he needs them to create by their obedience to the law of Moses. The last days represents a prophecy, which is unfulfilled and will remain unfulfilled until God is properly glorified by his modern day obedient church. So back to Jacob warning his sons about the last days. One of the sons is named Benjamin, from whom the tribe of Benjamin arose. Jacob predicts what each of his sons' tribes would become. And of Benjamin, he says in Genesis 49:27, "Benjamin is a ravenous wolf. In the morning he shall devour the prey, and at night he shall divide the spoil." Here is a biblical pattern for you that proceeds like most biblical patterns. It starts in the Old Testament and is fulfilled in the New Testament. Where else have we heard a warning about a ravenous wolf? From the words of Jesus in Matthew 7:15. "Beware of false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ravenous wolves." Who is Jesus warning us about? None other than Saul of Tarsus. Saul was a Pharisee from the tribe of Benjamin. Saul himself tells us this in Romans 11:1. "I myself am an Israelite, a descendant of Abraham, a member of the tribe of Benjamin." And in Philippians 3:5, Paul says of himself, "Of the people of Israel, of the tribe of Benjamin." Paul also said in Galatians 1:13, "I persecuted the church of God violently and tried to destroy it." Paul is the wolf from the tribe of Benjamin who came in sheep's clothing to scatter the flock. And he's accomplished it so far. The mistake is to think Paul has changed from being a wolf. Paul only changed his tactics. He went from using physical means like murder and prison to destroy the church to using his false spiritual testimony to destroy the church. So this is a pretty direct indictment from Jesus of Paul. But let's get to our next pattern, and it's another Benjamin pattern that is an allegorical indictment of Paul. There was a time in the history of the Hebrews when they were led by kings, and King Saul was the first king of Israel. Saul was from the tribe of Benjamin. And he says in 1 Samuel 9:21, "Am I not a Benjamite from the least of the tribes of Israel?" So this Saul foreshadows the Saul to come, and they're both Benjamites. And King Saul here admits, just like Saul of Tarsus, Paul, that he is from the tribe of the ravenous wolf, as was the New Testament Saul. King Saul was king at the time the tribe of Judah had separated from the tribe of Israel, and David, of David and Goliath fame, was from the tribe of Judah, which was descended from Jacob's son Judah. If you don't know about David from the Old Testament, you should read about him. David's very important to the Bible story because Jesus came from the bloodline that traces to Judah through David. King Saul feared David because David was so popular with the people. So Saul tried to kill David, but David escaped. And it was an ongoing story between Saul and David. Later in the continuing story between the two, Saul refused to follow an instruction God gave him during a battle. So God rejected Saul as king of Israel and chose David instead. This story is an allegory or a story that has a hidden meaning, which is why Jesus taught in parables, which are also stories with hidden meanings. And remember that Jesus is from the line of Judah. Jesus said in Revelation 22:16, I am the root and the descendant of David, the bright morning star. When God chose David over Saul, it wasn't just a detail in a story. It was a message from God warning us to choose the teachings of Jesus over the teachings of Paul, who is Saul of Tarsus. That's an allegory, and you see these all throughout the Bible. Just as Saul tried to kill David, with David being God's representation of the future Jesus, Saul of Tarsus, who became Paul, is trying to kill Jesus through his false testimony. Please don't let him do that. Turn from Saul and turn to the kingdom teachings of Jesus. The Bible is a powerful work of literature. It's a novel, and the novel has a story that flows together in beautiful patterns. You can only serve Jesus properly if you follow his instructions and view the Bible as a story. You can only do this if you understand that Jesus taught in parables. Read the parables, read between the lines. These parables are stories with a moral. Jesus is trying to elevate your thinking of the Bible to that level. As you go through your Bible, no matter where you are, what book or chapter you're in, keep in mind two things as you follow the Bible story. One, Paul is a false apostle. And two, we have a mutually spiritual relationship with God. These two things will give you a perspective on what God is trying to do at any point in the story and what you need to do for God, what we all need to do for God. I have many videos explaining Paul. You can find on my YouTube channel. And my most thorough video on the spiritual relationship with God is called Are Christians Spiritual Beings? Even better, you can read my book, The Moment Time Stopped, available in paperback or ebook on Amazon. And it teaches all of my teaching positions, and you can better understand the Bible.